So
Thank you.
let me get straight to some brain science with you. Now, former baby here. I confess I used to be a baby. I don't remember much of it at all. My daughter, on the other hand, claims she remembers the womb, but that's her. I don't personally remember the womb and anything after it for a good long time. If we don't really remember our earliest months, our earliest year on Earth, how do we know that any of it matters?
That's such a great question. And actually, most of us have what's called childhood amnesia until about age 5, where we don't really remember much. We may have 1 or 2 memories from before age 5 or 6, but they typically tend to be something that was a huge change. Like I have an early memory around age 3 of when I had to be taken to the hospital because I had to have stitches on my head. And I remember being in my 70s purple poncho with the little palms in my dad's arms. And I remember the parking lot. Like I remember some things about it. But that's the only thing I remember before that age. So that's really typical for most of us not to remember. But when we say we don't remember, we're actually talking about something called explicit memory. And Dan and I write about this in The Whole Brain Child. Explicit memory is where you remember something and it has the feel of remembering. You know you're remembering. So if I were to say to you, what did you have for breakfast this morning? You could tell me and you would know you were remembering that fact. But there's something called implicit memory, which is really where you are remembering but you don't know you're remembering. It doesn't have the feel of that. So an example of that is what's called a type of implicit memory is called procedural memory. So when you get in your car and you drive, you're able to do that because you remember all of the motor activity and attentional resources and all the things you need to do in order to drive your car. But when you get in and you put your seatbelt on and you put your car in reverse and you start backing up, you're not thinking, I am now remembering how to drive a car. You just know how to do it. And so what happens is that implicit memory, or let me just say this, memory is association. That's really all memory is. So when I say drinking hot chocolate that's too hot, or coffee that's too hot, you all know the physical sensation of when you burn your mouth and it feels like sandpaper, and all of those are associations with those experiences. And that's what implicit memory does. We believe that implicit memory may even start in the womb. And so when people say, don't worry about this medical procedure, don't worry about this trauma that happened to your child because they won't remember it, they mean they won't remember it explicitly. But the body keeps the score. That's Bessel van der Kolk's title of his book about trauma that I love. And our implicit memory remembers that. And it's important because the purpose of our memory is to keep us safe. So my son had a kind of traumatic swimming lesson experience when he was about 4. And he didn't really remember it, but later when it was time to go to swimming lessons, even though he could already swim and he loved swimming with his friends, when I said the word swimming lessons, he was immediately like, do I have to go? And his brain remembered whatever that is a bad idea. So, when we touch something hot, it's painful. Our brain remembers that, so we don't do it again. So memory is really important to keep us safe. But what we do in those first 3 years, is crucial, and beyond, even in those early first 5 or 6 years, that is when the brain has the most changes happening, is in that 0 to 6 window, most of them happening between 0 to 3. It's the most period of connections and brain change. The second period of the most brain change is actually during adolescence. So let me say it this way, Sarah. What happens to us in our early months and years matters tremendously, but it doesn't mean that our history is always our destiny. So if we do have difficult things that happen to us in our early years, they are important, but it doesn't mean that there's no hope. So the brain is plastic and we can, make changes or process difficult things that happened. One other thing I'll say related to the science of this is that one of the things we talk about with the brain is the regulatory circuitry, which is really the part of the brain that helps us regulate our emotions and regulate our attention and regulate our bodily states. So it's really the part of our brain that allows us to really be grounded and get back to baseline when we have challenges or adversity. And the regulatory circuits of the brain are set up in the first 18 months. So those early months, the way we respond to our infants by helping them feel safe, by helping them build trust that their needs will be seen and responded to, that we help regulate their bodily states and their emotions and their attention. But by us doing that with them, we are actually setting up the regulatory circuits of the brain so that they have a greater capacity to regulate themselves better for the rest of their living years.
That is a fantastically clear explanation of something that is, worth the volumes of encyclopedia material. So thank you for that.